Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep podcast. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode. This show is all about the world of first-person shooters, their legacies, their lineage, and the people who keep that world turning. It is the will of the drowned god Cathala that our communities band together to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. Okay, what's up, fuckers? It's the Motherlode yet again, and we've got another doozy of an episode for you. As you can tell, I've kind of been on an immersive sim journey lately, and I'm really digging it. So we've got Dillon Rogers, developer of Gloomwood, on the show, and I'm really excited about this. If you're a fan of things like System Shock or Thief or Resident Evil or like just survival horror / immersive sim stuff, anything like that, I think you're going to really dig this episode, and I'm very, very happy with the interview itself, because this was one where it was really easy to do. Like, Dillon's a great guy, very easy to talk to, and very responsive, and he knows exactly kind of what direction he wants to go with this thing. Very quick to answer, so it's going to be pretty compact, and I hope you appreciate that as much as I did, because it made my job easy. But I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves, taking care of your loved ones, and, just getting through this thing as well as you possibly can. I'm not going to harp on it. Just try to take the next 30 minutes or so, whatever this episode length ends up being, and put that shit out of your mind. Deep breath in, out, and let's get in the keep with Dillon Rogers.
Prior to doing games, I was a modder, and I used to do like Half-Life and TF2 maps, and for a long time, that's kind of how I learned how to make stuff in engines. I used to make maps. I used to do like scripts and mods and stuff like that. By the time I hit college, I started to branch out and do more like coding stuff, and started doing my own projects, and that's kind of when I started becoming an indie dev, and did that for a little while, and did a bunch of different projects. I did a little like Blade Runner type game called Electric Tortoise. Eventually, I saw David making Dusk, and at that time I had started working on Gloomwood, and we both expressed interest in each other's projects, and that sort of grew into like a friendship. And eventually, just by talking to David quite often, I ended up helping on Dusk in a couple different ways. I would help him if he got like stuck doing some level design. I'd come in and lay out some like geometry and try and be like, oh, this might be a cool way to do this area. I also ended up helping on some coding in various areas, like the final boss and whatnot. And then that kind of got me got my foot in the door at New Blood, and eventually I was like, oh, I would be interested in pitching Gloomwood to a publisher, and at the time I was thinking between Night Dive and New Blood. And because I was already kind of in New Blood, like David helped me pitch it to Dave, and eventually he liked it. So that's kind of been my journey so far.
So you played like Half-Life and you did the mod and stuff for all that, but what kind of drove you to end up with Gloomwood? Because it seems like it's more of like a survival horror, and everybody's going to make the Thief connection and all that. So what made you want to deviate from what you were already doing to create something along these lines?
Yeah, so I've always been someone who does like horror stuff, kind of like David. I've had a long history of really enjoying kind of like spooky, macabre kind of stuff. Gloomwood So I actually Gloomwood's an old project that has kind of been on and off for a couple of years, and the iteration that everyone now knows it as is like a very thief inspired game. Has really only existed for probably about 3 or 4 years now. But I started the project files like back when I was in college as kind of like I'm gonna learn how to make like a game, and it's gonna be like a spooky village, and you'll be able to explore it and stuff. That just kind of I just kept coming back to the project and being like, oh, it'd be cool if it was like this. And over the years, I got really into immersive sims. Became a huge Thief fan. Loved like System Shock. Loved Deus Ex, and was like, oh, you know what? I kind of feel like this game would fit in that genre. This game feels like an immersive sim, and I align myself with those goals. So I started to kind of push it in that direction and kind of take aspects of those games that I really loved and molded them into Gloomwood.
What inspired you to like kind of deviate from your original plan in the first place?
I think my taste in games just kind of changed over the years.
Oh.
Yeah, like so I actually didn't end up playing a lot of the immersive sims when they came out because my family got a computer kind of late, and so my first person shooters were kind of, or my first PC games were kind of like were 2000 era, and I kind of missed the train on playing Thief for the first time when it came out. So I ended up coming back to those games in college, and that's kind of when I was like, oh wow, these games are amazing. This is kind of exactly what I want from games. This feeling of being like dropped into a world and being your own kind of character and being able to make your own choices. My interest in game design kind of moved more in that direction of like, oh, okay, this is the kind of stuff I want to make.
Just like as I watched the other day, I believe it was Night Dive streamed a little bit of footage from the game, and I've been kind of following it, as much as I could, given the amount of information that's been out about it lately. But as I've seen it in motion, like it definitely, has that kind of thief with gun vibes. I think that's the term that Dave was using, but
yes.
But I mean, it even to an extent like reminded me of like Hitman Blood Money. Like you kind of had that same sort of like sneaking around, hiding people in block. And I went back just to say that I did and played a little bit of Thief before this interview just to kind of get myself in that mindset. And I could still see how this is kind of going to stand on its own two legs. Like it doesn't have to just ride off of that name, but the setting also I think is what really ties it in. So can you? It seems like you've put a lot of thought into like kind of the story and lore behind this, even if it's not going to be explicitly laid out. What's the plan with that, and what do you have so far?
So the story is essentially that you are a character and you've been brought to Gloomwood, this kind of mysterious Victorian town, and all the denizens there have been morphed into these kind of horrific creatures, and the story is essentially finding out what happened there, why you were brought there, and trying to survive the night in the city.
Yeah, Shadow over Innsmouth.
Just kind of unraveling the mystery and what's going on.
So I mean, it seems kind of obvious there's some Lovecraft interest there, but was that exactly why you wanted to do this Victorian theme, or was there another influence?
I think the Victorian theme is just something that is just a theme that really appeals to me. Like originally, it was very much like, oh, I really like kind of like old London, foggy Jack the Ripper vibes, and I wanted to kind of take that and make it kind of like magical and mysterious and kind of urban legend creatures. And just there was a lot of room to play around with that theme that excites a lot of different imagery.
It also actually, I think it saves your resources because the skybox can just be fog and you don't have to worry so much.
Yeah.
I noticed that quickly, but I love the lighting also. Like I think that really plays into kind of the setting and the theme and everything, and you have a lot of, at least in the early part that we've seen so far, like some brick layout and some glowing windows. It's very like beautiful, very simplistic, but it paints exactly like, I think it sets the tone for the atmosphere very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys, did you immediately tackle that, or was there more like a level design aspect to it? Because you've been working on this since 2015, something along those lines.
Yeah, for a good while. And it has changed quite a bit over the years.
So what did you come to Dave like with your pitch? What did you bring to him?
Right. So, as I'm pretty sure you've heard in the past, Dave doesn't really like pitches. He likes demos. So usually, if you want to get Dave to be excited about something, you kind of have to put a game in front of him first.
Mhm.
And so that's essentially like I told David that, hey, I want to give Dave a demo of Gloomwood, and I wasn't quite sure how he was going to take it because at the time, I didn't know Dave too well. I had interfaced with him a couple times because I worked on Dusk a little bit, but I only kind of knew him as like, oh, he worked on Rise of the Triad 13, um, and he was working on Dusk and a Medieval. I kind of knew him as like a very hardcore retro shooter guy. So I wasn't like I was like Gloomwood's a bit slower pace. It's an immersive sim. It's got stealth elements. But when I gave him the demo, he actually really liked it, and I actually learned that he was a Thief fan himself. He was like, "Oh yeah, I could tell that this was super Thief inspired, just the way you could like open doors and how moving felt very Thief." And that's how I kind of got his attention. Is that I kind of appealed to the part of him that loves these kind of games as well.
Yeah, I think so. That especially you mentioned the movement when you have like most Doom players are just turn on auto run, and same thing with basically all of those quote unquote retro shooter games. Then you play these immersive sims and you add the Q and E kind of lean aspect and everything. And if you go back and try to play Thief, like, I mean, you start off with like that wacky controller scheme where you actually have to.
Yes,
It's like the most unbelievably complicated shit in the world. But I mean, it's really cool to kind of see that without having to remap it myself. But you guys are going to have, I'm assuming, recreate sort of that movement style where you can, lean and sneak all the time and change your movement pace and everything. And are you going to be playing with shadows at all too?
yes. So yeah, we recreated that kind of feel of like, oh, you can sneak, you can crouch, you can lean like in any direction, like the original Thief and System Shock. Um, and we did modernize it, so it still uses WADST, and it feels pretty good. And you're not. I think Thief originally had it where like like X was backwards and S was like walk slowly. It was very strange. Yeah,
from like Q down to C and ZX, and like they're all like lean.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like I get this out of my face, but that's good to hear. I'm really glad you're going to be playing with that. And the other thing is, can you go prone? Are you going to be like crawling underneath things, or is it just crouch?
It's currently crouch. Prone. I've like thought about a couple different areas where it's like, oh, it'd be cool to like kind of go prone and go through a crawl space, but we haven't messed with that yet. So we may mess with something like that, because I know you could pretty much go prone in like System Shock 1 and stuff, but it's not something we've added yet.
Are you going to be picking locks in this game?
Yeah, we're gonna have a system where you can pick locks.
Right on. Is it a unique system? Is it something you can compare to anything we've seen before in particular, or?
At the moment, it's not. It's kind of in a. We've like prototyped a couple different systems. I believe it's going to be pretty similar to how the original immersive sims did it. So like how Thief and Deus Ex, where it's like a Thief where you like hold it over a lock, but also I think Deus Ex where the locks themselves are like an item you get.
it's going to be an interesting challenge because I know some people are like super into it. I mean, I know actual locksmiths that are probably like, they throw up at the thought of what we do with these things. But I'm really excited to see how you guys end up, putting that finishing touch. And with a game like this, the sounds of things like picking a lock, or just in general the sound design overall of the game. And from what I've seen and heard so far, it's fucking amazing. Who's working on that? Taylor.
Yes, Taylor has been doing the music for a while, and he's done some of the ambience too, and he's helped on a couple of the sounds, and then the rest has been me and David also doing some of the sound work for like. David helped out on some of the gun sound effects because he's really good at that kind of stuff, and I did a couple of the other things like windows shattering or like breaking boxes and whatnot.
This is one of those games where I hope it doesn't change, but just the sound of the footstep on the cobblestone street is like really, if you close your eyes, it just takes you there. And that,
yeah, that I actually went through a whole bunch of different footsteps until I settled on that one to get that kind of like, it's a cobblestone echoing in the fog kind of sound.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the enemy AI and stuff like that. So are there going to be difficulty settings where like they're a little bit more streamlined or a little bit more prone to doing different types of behavior? What can we expect from that?
So there are different difficulty settings. They're named after different moon cycles. So the easiest one is Crescent,
Okay.
and then it goes all the way up to the nightmare difficulty is called Blood Moon, and
That's genius.
yeah, and the difficulties change quite a couple different things. So it does change some AI things, like they move faster in combat. They're a bit more sharper. Their animations swing faster. So if one's coming at you with an axe, the time for you to like block it or get out of the way will be shorter. But it'll also affect enemy placement. So like if you're playing on Crescent, there may be no guards in a particular area. In like a particular room, but if you're playing on Blood Moon, it might have like 2 or 3 guards in that room suddenly.
Oh, okay.
And then it also affects how much ammunition you have access to, how much health is on the map. So it and even in a couple situations, it might affect. One of the easier passages may be blocked off on Blood Moon, and you might have to take a harder passage.
It's just like in any immersive sim, and especially stealth style anything. You have that point where it's the enemy AI just kind of seems inhuman or stupid. It can kind of take you out of it, and I'm down for it. I honestly just really suck at stealth. Period. Like I can't even play like the first dungeon of Wind Waker without fucking up 100 times.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it is. It's like unbelievable. I was like, wow, man, this is for kids. I thought, but whatever. And that's not even with difficulty, scaling or anything like that. But it's really fun to kind of see how they work out. Is it going to be like a line of sight sort of thing? And I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure that I got quite an answer on it, but like, are they going to be able to see into shadows? Is there a proximity setting? Sounds matter to the enemies. Can they see your shadow? Like, I'm curious about all this kind of stuff. How much?
Yes.
Okay.
So we modeled it pretty similar to Thief. We did clean up some of the aspects that I thought were a little rough with Thief's original kind of stealth. But shadows do get taken into account. You can hide in shadows. You sound effects definitely do count. So if you're sneaking across like stone or even like a carpet, you can pretty much like run across carpet. You're totally fine there. But if you like are running across metal, like enemies will hear that and they will come and investigate. So sounds definitely matter. If you fire a gun, you're gonna have a lot of enemies checking out where the gun was fired, and it may end up being. We wanted it so that like making loud noises is a risk. It's something that you have to really kind of like factor. If you're going to fire a shotgun, you have to be prepared for the fact that a lot more, the neighbors are going to wake up and they're going to be coming and seeing what's going on.
Right on. Okay, that sounds like a fairly intelligent adversaries we're gonna have to face off here. So that's really actually a relief. I worry about that sort of thing in general, like especially with it being modern. People have just all these expectations that you have to live up to, and then some people are also just going to want to be like, why isn't it just like like the old games or whatever? I just want to play the same thing over again. I'm glad that you guys are kind of doing your own thing with it and taking all that stuff into account. And obviously, like I wouldn't for a second doubt. I don't know you as well. I wouldn't doubt Szymanski would bring all this stuff up, and I definitely, since you say Dave Oshry is a big fan of Thief, I'm sure he had a lot of thoughts to bring up. But what's the creative team like? Like when you guys are talking about these things, are they telling you what they want to see out of it, or are you just kind of free to do your own thing for the most part? Dave said that he was pretty heavily involved in development.
Yes. So creative wise, it's mostly so. It's me, Dave, and David, and we have our own like internal uh meeting system. Like we meet every week or so and do like a run through the game, and uh I'll show them what I've been working on, and David also helps with development in various places. And then we talk about like, oh, what are some issues with the game right now? What's some stuff that Dave thinks needs to be better or needs to be added? It's a very collaborative process, and we have there has been places where we've kind of jostled and like, oh no, it should be like this, but um, that's kind of normal. Like everyone is kind of inputting what they think the game should be, and we're kind of carving a path so it feels like a very dynamic, and we can play the game for example, David and I really like playing this game as kind of like a stealthy survival horror game. So like we'll use the stealth options until we get caught, and then we'll like swap to firearms and use what ammunition we have. But Dave really likes playing quite stealthily. Yeah. He really likes getting those backstabs, and if he gets caught, he returns back to the shadows, waits until things cool down, and then resumes being sneaky again. So we're building the game in a way that kind of lets the player have a bunch of different options for approaching different situations and kind of doing what they want to do and exploring how they want to explore the city.
This is something that needs to be kind of stated about this particular genre of game, is that you do not have, I don't think, any more like freedom in a linear game than you could possibly have here, where you have 3 or 4 different options about basically every single interaction you're going to have. You can choose to be stealthy. If you wanted to just get into a straight up firefight in this game, is that basically just signing your death deal, or is that possible?
It's okay, so it can be quite difficult depending on a couple of different factors. The ammunition in the game is quite limited. It's like survival horror levels of ammunition.
Right.
So not only do you have like a limited amount of ammunition to deal with, but as I noted earlier, the guns are loud. So it's not uncommon when the game was being played at like PAX and stuff, that people would get into a firefight, and the amount of enemies that would come to check it out would overwhelm them eventually. Like they would just they got into a firefight with like 1 or 2 guards, and then the next guardhouse down the road a little bit heard what was going on and brought reinforcements, and then now they're losing that battle. So it's kind of the firearms are there, but you have to be super careful about using them. And they can be great because they're very powerful. Like the shotgun can pretty much like take down an enemy per shot, but it's something you have to really kind of factor into. Like, oh, if I shoot the shotgun now, I may need to retreat and run away and let the air cool a little bit, because there's going to be a lot of people in this area searching for what's happened.
And is there like a sliding scale for like the amount of time they'll dedicate to searching for you? Like, do they forget about you? Like, whatever, it's not worth their time anymore, or like, is the damage done?
So you can eventually reset enemies back to their normal state, but how long it takes depends on what intensity that they were brought up to. So if they saw something suspicious, but then it kind of like went away, they'll return back to normal pretty quickly. But if they found like a body and like shotgun shells and just signs of a fight, or they like saw you killing someone else, then yeah, they'll be brought to high alert and they'll look for you for a while. And you can wait it out and let them reset, but it will take longer than not being caught at all.
So would you say that, I mean, in general, it's going to reward you for just being as sneaky as possible, I would assume?
Yes. So being sneaky is the path of least resistance in a way. There are times where like the firearms are going to be something that you'll have to like bring out because if you get caught in certain situations, there are enemies that are faster than you, and it'll be very difficult to get away. But if you can manage to sneak past everything, not only do you not have to fight those enemies, but you also keep all the ammunition that you would have spent fighting them. So it's kind of like saving your supplies for a rainy day in a sort of way. You'll be able to save them for if things go bad later.
So is this going to be a situation sort of like Thief, where when you start a level, it gives you like you're just in like the hub and it says go get X, Y, and Z and try to accomplish these things while you do it. Go in, infiltrate, and knock that out? Or are we looking at like a more like streamlined level to level, like go till you get to the exit of the level, move on? What are we looking at task wise?
So the city is divided up into different districts, and you'll start in one district, and you have a couple characters that will interact with you, and one in particular will be sending you letters and messages and helping guide you and trying to figure out what's going on, giving you clues to where you're supposed to be going. And you'll gradually open the city up. So you will be it. It is kind of like a System Shock 2, where you can, once you go from one deck to another deck, you can return back to the older decks. So in this case, you can go to, if you open up a new district, you can return back to the older district. And there'll be times where you have to do that because you'll get a key that opens up a building in the first district that you couldn't open up.
That is so cool. I'm 100% in on that idea. So I guess the last real big thing that I wanted to kind of address was the weapon design. You said Szymanski had been working pretty heavily on the gun sounds and everything, and I really like the starter weapon, which I think can only be described as a pimp cane.
Yeah, the cane sword. Yep.
Yeah. So, what was the journey into this stuff? How did you think about these weapons, and what can we expect to see throughout the course of the game?
So I really like that era of like weaponry, the kind of like 1800s weaponry, and I not only like 1800 weaponry, I like the weird ones that came out of that era. So
like blunderbusses.
Yeah, so I really the cane sword felt like a natural fit for the kind of Victorian vibe that we've got going. It felt like a very iconic weapon. I got to do a lot of fun stuff with it, like how it detaches back into it. You can holster it and just walk around with it like a cane, which is just like, oh, that's a really cool like aspect of it. But all the weapons that we have are very era appropriate kind of weapons, and they're also very quirky. So the shotgun, as you probably might have seen, is not a traditional kind of Winchester shotgun. It's a folding pump shotgun, which is based on
I want to do it. Go ahead.
So it's based upon an older kind of rare design called a Burgess, and it's very unknown nowadays. It was only a couple thousand were made, and so the shotgun can actually, when you bring it out, it unfolds, and it's still usable as like a pump shotgun. Like, it carries 5 shells, it pumps after each one, but when you put it away, it folds back into itself, and you put it into like a holster. It's a very quirky weapon.
When I first saw that weapon like in the gameplay, and like he pulled it out and he started loading it and everything. I'm like, I thought it was supposed to be an over under. I'm like, why the fuck does that have a pump on it?
Yeah.
I had to go look it up. It's like, this guy's crazy, but you're not. You put in more thought than I did. So kudos on that.
And we have a couple other weapons coming that are like even crazier. They're weapons that have existed. Like we'll sometimes make tweaks so it like fits the gameplay a little better, but there are some really quirky weapons coming that are going to be really fun to play with.
You don't want to drop anything. It's all top secret right now.
Well, I've like hinted at it, but we are going to have we are going to have rope arrows, but they're not going to be
okay.
They're going to be fired from a harpoon launcher, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's that to look forward to.
You're gonna be sliding along the rope and everything to get into buildings, or
it's more going to be that you're going to like fire like a harpoon into wood and climbing up into windows, and there's some buildings you can breach that way. If you want to take like start on the second floor of a building and sneak downwards and such.
Okay, so not like a climbing hook where you're like slinging it and throwing it, to the top of the building, pulling it, and then scaling the side of the building. We're not going to be looking at anything like that. Just
it operates pretty similarly to how thief arrows work, but it's an actual gun that you fire it from.
Right on, man. Well, I'm pretty satisfied with that. Do you have anything else that you would like to get into or just say about the game before we get out of here?
It's mostly just that I know we've talked a little bit of most people know this as like, it's very thiefy, but there's a lot of different immersive sim elements that kind of have entered this game, and it's going to be really fun seeing the different things that pop up. That people are like, oh yeah, I remember that mechanic or that idea from like Deus Ex, or that's a very like System Shock thing. And some elements I've taken aren't even immersive sim elements. They're elements from other games that I thought would fit here. So, for example, I took the gun ammo checking system from Condemned. So when you check the ammo in your guns, you physically like open up the guns and see what bullets are inside the chambers. Just kind of like things like that I thought would be like, this would feel really immersive. This would feel really cool. And elements like that are just, I kind of adore little details like that. That's the kind of thing that I'm like, oh yeah, this would be a really cool moment. Like being in a corner, you're hiding from a couple like denizens looking for you, and you're just like opening a gun and counting how many bullets you have. It's just moments like that I'm really excited to see people experience.
That is the kind of stuff that I think makes it an immersive sim. It's as simple as something in System Shock where you kind of beat your hand with the pipe to feel the weight of it, and even though you don't feel it in your body, like seeing it triggers that response inside. And I'm really glad to see that you guys are kind of going that direction with it. And I kind of expected that because like Szymanski's the man with the spinning shotguns, dude. Like he gets that. So I'm really stoked about this project. And at any point in time you get some more content or get ready for release, I'm super down to talk even more about it, because I wouldn't be talking to you if I weren't absolutely stoked about it.
Of course.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got some really exciting stuff coming up pretty soon, so I'll keep you in the loop.
I want to thank Dillon, and I want to thank all the fine folks over at New Blood for constantly putting out amazing content and keeping, people like me employed. Really, like, I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I love the fact that they're constantly just doing amazing shit that keeps this community alive, talking, something to look forward to, everything. Great work from those guys. Not gonna go unrecognized, not on this podcast, I guarantee it. But before we go, a few plugs. I do want to say, if you're listening to this on the, what day is it going to be? We'll say the 21st, the day it debuts. If you're listening to it then, you should know that we're having the inaugural Warfork Clan Arena tournament in the Keep. That said, if you want more information on it, it will be on the 25th, and you can find all the details by going to inthekeep.com and joining the Discord. That is all that you need to know for now. But if you are interested in a 3v3 Clan Arena tournament in the amazing game that is Warfork, I highly recommend you join the Keep and hit us up. Hashtag events, I believe, is the channel in the server where you can find all the good stuff, or just at Apostles, and we'll help you. It'll be fun. Also, just want to say thank you to everybody who has been wonderful, and even in this time of crisis has been just constantly keeping up with their support of the show. And I'm not going to name everybody off this time. Actually, that list is getting maybe too long for me to continue to read on the show, so I may have to reconsider how I do that. But point being, you know who you are, you know you're amazing, and I thank each and every one of you. And the Drowned God Gathala thanks each and every one of you. Remember, we need your frags and jibs more than anything. And I also want to thank all the people who have been sharing the show more than anything. That's the number one thing that you can do to support. Forget about all the money shit or whatever. The sharing, the telling other people that this content exists even is the best thing you can do. So that said, guys, thank you very much. I hope you're staying safe. I hope everything's cool with you in your life, and if it's not, I promise it'll get better. It has to. Just take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and stay in the Keep.